Hello, I'm going to call to order this special meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. And Madam Clerk, I understand we have some regrets this morning.
We have regrets from Councillors Elgar, Giddings, and Lischina.
Thank you. And we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? I don't see any, Madam Clerk. And we have no delegations listed for this singular agenda item, which is the spring 2017 flood damage claim. Everybody on council has, of course, had a chance to read this, but I thought maybe for the viewers at home, we might ask staff to give us at least an indication for the public as to what we're doing here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Burton and members of council, and certainly my apologies for having to drag you out here on a Friday ahead of a long weekend, and but it's cold outside, and at least it's nice in here. The purpose of this meeting is to pass a resolution to go to the province of Ontario to complete our application for the potential claim of damages due to the high water marks that we've been experiencing since April of this year. And in some ways, it feels a little bit embarrassing to be talking about high weather and damage here when we compare ourselves to what's happened in Texas. But nevertheless, the shoreline and the water has been very high this year, and a number of municipalities along Lake Ontario also have claims going in. Late last week, we received a letter from the province indicating that they wanted to complete the applications coming in, including a resolution from this council. So that's why we've called you together today to pass this resolution. At this point in time, most of our expenses have been as a result of cleaning up, in particular Coronation Park and other areas where debris and localized flooding. Certainly the two major harbors had a lot of impact this spring for the boating community, produced a lot of work where we had to deploy staff to manage all of the implications of the high water mark. What we are unsure of at this time is the extent of capital damage to actual infrastructure. And we've done some very preliminary assessments, but without being able to see below the water line, particularly at the critical areas where structures meet the lake bottom, it's hard to assess exactly what that damage. The other thing that's been of concern, certainly from those of us that are engineers, is the rate at which the water has receded and what impacts that has had on the soils behind the structures as well. So we anticipate the water is still at a level where we're not able to get the full assessment. We are hoping by early to mid-fall to get it. That is supplementary information which we will pass on to the province. The one thing that is very positive for us is that last year we had actually done a complete inventory across the town of Oakville of all of our infrastructure, which puts us in a good position with respect to current data of the condition. Now, it is our expectation, as the report mentions, there's a threshold of 3% of your tax levy, which for the town of Oakville amounts to just over $5 million, which we'd have to hit that threshold. We're certainly substantially below that now. We're hopeful that we will not reach that mark, and that the damage with the water has receded quite slowly. That's been a good thing, and in terms of the back soils. So cautiously optimistic that we won't reach that threshold, but to not put this application forward and find out that there was other damage that we just weren't seeing would be a mistake on the part of the town. So it's with a caution that we put this forward. An expectation, though, is that we will not be applying. You'll recall the ice storm a couple of years ago. It happened within, over a 24-hour period. Within 3 weeks, we had a full assessment. That, and we were very successful at achieving that. This is a much more difficult one, and at this point in time, the level of damage we're not certain of.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Are there questions for the town manager? Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Ray. Just a question. You talked about the inventory. In our next report, Could you provide for council the inventory of all those water or shoreline that's owned by the town? Because I'm not very familiar with, I know with Coronation Park and the two harbors. Are there other ones that we're not aware of, that we should be aware of as council?
Well, certainly we'll include that, and we'll provide a map that'll actually show the complete inventory across town, where we have beach, where we have hard infrastructure. We'll happy to provide that
great.
to members of council.
Thank you. And last question, help me out as I'm not an engineer. Scope of asset, 6 cubic meters of riprap, 1 kilometer of seawall construction. Is that a preset of what the government is looking at that we would have to replace?
Right now, do you want, or John, do you want to take that?
So that phrase that's in your report, that's actually taken straight from the ministry's guidelines. So it's just an example of the sort of stuff that we would have to include. That doesn't tie to any of our stuff. That's just them giving standard terms.
Okay, so it's not a universal standard that everybody's using?
No, it's just
Okay.
a way to give us to have us provide them descriptions of what work needs to be done.
Great, thanks very much.
If you actually look at our shoreline, because the land meets the lake at different angles, there's different types of shoreline which are deployed. Some places we have what they call a slope with a riprap and armor stone. Other places it's a very hard wall that is flat against the lake. So,
Councillor Duddick?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Building on what my colleague had referred to at the onset regarding ownership along the lakeshore, my other concern is to sort of, what shall I say, dispel some of the miscommunication. There have been several individual landowners who contacted us under the misinformation that they thought the town was responsible, but if it's private property, that homeowner is the one who's responsible. And so that's one, I think, where that map would be advantageous to be able to provide to people to clearly indicate those are private lands, not town-owned.
thank you very much, Councillor. In fact, you know, as I was mulling over in my head as you were speaking, rather than wait to that next report, we'll have staff put together the mapping, send it out to members of council, so you have it now. So there are no misconceptions out there as to what's private, what's town. You're quite correct, though. There are a majority of the lakefront is privately owned, and the town has no property interests out there. Much of it is shoreline protected. I know a number of people that I have spoken to that did suffer some damage. That is unfortunately a private matter that they have to deal with, either with their insurers or privately. But those private areas are the responsibility of the property owner. But we will send that mapping out very soon.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mr. Green. I've actually had a number of residents in the past couple of weeks who look at the trail system and they say, come on, what's going on? Just get in there and open it up and you know, let us have use to it. It's a little ridiculous. So I might tap into your engineering side here and wondering if you might be able to just explain quickly what the potential danger is, say on West Street or Mississauga Street at the bottom where the trail is, why we can't just open that up right now, or what the potential pitfall is or damage that could have been done that we can't see right now.
Certainly in a number of the instances that I've looked at with Chris Mark where the damage has occurred, you might be going in and repairing the pathway only to find out behind the wall itself all has to come out to give a permanent protection. So opening up, I don't know, Chris, if you have any additional comments with respect to West Street, but that is the problem. I mean, we'd be going in, people would see that as being repaired and finished, when in fact there's other damage that's between the trail and the wall that precludes us from getting a permanent repair.
Councillor Chisholm.
Magic, it's working. Just top one, is it a health and safety issue with the closures of our trails and some of our parkland? Is it a health and safety? Because I've been saying to some of our constituents that it's a health and safety issue. You know, there are some risks associated with this, so that's why they're closed off. Am I misleading now, or should we? I just want to be clear on that one. Thanks, Chair.
The one thing I can assure you, and I know with Chris Mark, they do continue to inspect right along the lakefront for any new damage that's coming along. Anything that is closed is considered a public danger. So for the protection of the public, while it may look stable, while things are readily apparent that it's this, but it's in fact something else.
Just shows you how quickly we can forget, I guess. Any other questions? If there's no other question, I need a mover and seconder. Councillor Dudek, Councillor O'Meara, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. We don't have any other business properly before us as a result of this being a special council meeting, but we do need a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Hutchins, all those in favor? Thank you. And I won't call you Chris. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. That completes our agenda. It's been great working with you, and we are adjourned.